Second option for choosing how to deliver your material is, of course, case method. And case method has its own series of issues, its own pros and cons. Let's address the major ones, and perhaps this will help you make some choices about how you're going to present your material. Now, if you have already made that decision and you're stuck on lecturing, then this segment and other segments may not be of that much interest to you. Nevertheless, I invite you to consider your own VABEs, your own assumptions about how one learns, which we cover in another segment, and think about whether or not the pros and cons of each of these techniques, including case method, might expand your repertoire, allow you to become more memorable, more stimulating, more provocative, and perhaps more engaging to the students and the audience that you're working with. Case method has a very different philosophy from lecturing. It was originally derived from educational experiences in medical schools, where teaching doctors would present the symptoms of a particular patient and invite residents or interns in the room to make their diagnoses. So lecturing a diagnosis is not the same as presenting the symptoms and having the students figure that out. And if they haven't figured it out, you really don't want them prescribing medication or operating on people. So back in the early part of the 20th century, this was used in medical schools, and perhaps before that, in the early 20th century, this was adapted for use in law schools and business schools. The challenge there is we're going to put real problems in front of students. So the fundamental issue of the case method is, how can I anticipate the kind of career challenges that my students will have and put those issues in a live context in front of them with greater rapidity that they would find in the real world, so that we can actually compress maybe 5 years, 10 years, or even more into a relatively short period of time by repetitively putting real issues and problems in front of them. This demands some respect for the student's experience. So if we're going to have people in the room, one of the fundamental philosophies of case method is we're not just going to rely on the instructor. We're going to assume that the people in the room have some level of intelligence, some level of experience. We may want to challenge their assumptions and their experience, but the point is we want to bring everyone's education, everyone's background, everyone's experience, and their beliefs about the way the world works onto the table and work with all of that, not just the experience of the instructor. So particularly in a business setting, this works extremely well. In a corporate setting, in a consulting setting, in a business school, bringing people who have a varied background, different work experiences, different educational experiences, and a different wisdom based on whatever lifetime experiences they've had, utilizing all of that in the room. And when you have a diverse student body, a diverse audience from different nationalities, from different educational backgrounds, this is a formula. It's a pot, if you will, that has a recipe for stimulating, high energy, engaging classroom discussions. We begin in case method with the phenomenon, not so much with theory. So one of the key challenges in case method is it tends to be an inductive process. And by that I mean we begin with the data and we invite each of the students to infer their own understanding based on that data. This is an inductive process. Some would call it reinventing the wheel. Some students and some faculty become impatient with it. On the other hand, it relates to your philosophy about how people learn best. And if you believe that people will learn more deeply, more sustainably by discovering principles rather than by being told principles, then case method is a good choice for you. In lecturing, we use a deductive approach. That is, we already, quote unquote, know what we think we should be telling our students. And that knowledge is a set of principles, a set of formula, a set of guidelines, a set of right answers that we want to portray to our students. And their job is to ingest them and remember and use them. Well, we know from research that in a lecture method classroom that frequently does not happen. It's more likely to happen in a case method class where we're relying on the students' active participation and the discovery process, even though you and I as instructors may understand some of the things that they're going to discover. We may not understand them all because each student has their own set of VABEs, their values, assumptions, beliefs, and expectations about the way the world is or should be, and those VABEs will filter or color the way they receive what's happening in the room, whether it's lecture, case method, or any other methodological choice. So having that set of philosophical principles in place, it also demands a respect for how people learn best. So if you believe that people learn best by sitting and taking notes, well, that's one thing. If you have a philosophy of learning, and again, we'll explore this in another segment, if you have a philosophy that says people learn best by being actively participating and engaged in the learning process, then case method is a better choice for you philosophically.